What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Operation Redwood podcast, where we restore manhood, rescue kids, and rebuild families. That is what we're about. And today, I'm joined with my co-host, Samuel. As you can see his beautiful face right here, or listen to his beautiful voice.
Well, thank you.
We're going to be talking about discipline. And a moment ago in our team meeting, Samuel was telling me a story of how during his training, he was running and he fell down. And after he fell down, he heard like a word from God.
Yeah.
And I love that story. But there's something that I actually didn't mention to him during the meeting, and I want him to talk about it now, is for him to have gotten to that part, to hear that word from God, there was a certain discipline that he had to implement into his life to get to A, B, C, and eventually the word. Now, discipline is such a core theme in being a warrior, in being a protector, and being a guardian, as like what we like to call it here at Redwood. And one of the first times when I met Samuel, he said, I'm not a runner, or I'm not an athlete. And a couple of weeks ago, he does his first, was it marathon? Or
It was a 25K, 15 and a half mile trail run.
This dude straight up went, he got his diet in order, he got his discipline intact, and he became that thing that he didn't think he was capable of becoming. And I think that part of that is outside of God. I think that's a discipline thing.
So thank you for that introduction. I remember looking this up actually for a podcast quite a while ago. We were talking about discipline, and we all hate that word, right? Like it just comes up, you hear it, and you're like, it sucks. My dad used to discipline me, put soap in my mouth. And
that's so true.
I just want to encourage our listeners to understand that the root of discipline is teaching and education. So disciples are educated or learners. And of course there's more to it, right? Like it's like whole body learning. Discipline is something that we submit to willingly for a better outcome. And as you were saying, like I was thinking about, okay, well, what is it that gives us this ability to hear from the Holy Spirit and to be attuned to that? And I think it starts with a willingness.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people can say, you can give lip service to, yes, I'm willing to learn, I'm ready to receive. And, Angelo, I know you've done coaching, and our listeners might have, and then the person flakes out, and they're not like, words mean very little when it comes to discipline. And there are people who can say very little, but then they just go to town and do it. And those people are the disciplined ones. And you can see it, you can feel the difference in people that are a lot of lip service, but no substance. So discipline is also unsexy.
Yes.
It's not flashy. It doesn't have any lights, and it gets up at 4 a.m. and starts the day. I have a friend, and we hope to get him on this podcast at some point. I have a friend, Jim Sibelico, who reminded me of this. He said, self-confidence is keeping the promises that you make to yourself, right? And I think there's a lot of discipline involved in self-confidence, and I can speak for that personally, right? So when you say to yourself you can't, it's true. When you say to yourself you can, it may not be true yet, but it's possible, and that possibility, I believe, changes everything. So go ahead.
So let me ask you, because I love where we're at in this conversation. If you can compare and contrast your discipline to prior to running your event and training for it and starting in that journey versus when you actually decided this is the goal, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to get disciplined. What were some of the key differences that you noticed with the way you approached and understood discipline?
Okay. What comes to mind first is an end to laziness. And I just, it's sort of silly to say it, but I think it's worthwhile. And it's also, I was 30 to 40 pounds heavier. Discipline changes our mindset and our outset. So so you're I think there's also something about like you are in your head what you're becoming, right? So that was the change, and I want to share this. Like I was running, it was dark, and I knew where I was going, but I was on a dirt road, and I tripped. And runners trip, like, just so you know, it happens. People fall when they run. Like, it happens a lot more than you might think. Because I was talking to someone like, runners trip, like, yeah, all the time. You fall down and you get back up, you keep going. I mean, it's a metaphor for life, right? This one was a pretty nasty one, and I'm connecting this. It was very early on in my training, and so, like, I live in Western Pennsylvania. It
Mhm.
was February. It was cold. It was really cold, and I was up at 4 in the morning before it was light. Now the moon was out, right? So, and it's silent. I'm on a dirt road, and we've already talked about my neighbors are Amish, right? So there's nobody around. It's pitch black, like in this now. I mean, the moon was out, but it's dark. I trip. I bent my fingers backwards, and the discipline was getting up. And I remembered thinking right away, oh, this is bad. And I had to keep going because I was a mile and a half from home anyways. So I started walking, and this is what I shared with Angelo. Is like I don't hear from God a lot, but I audibly heard His voice say, "Get up, King, and keep going." And as I started running, I started moving, and then that was like clearly his voice. But then the idea that came into my head, for listeners that don't know, Samuel means God hears, and Samuel was an early priest and prophet in the time of prophets. He was the last prophet before at the time of Judges, and he anointed the first king. He actually anointed two kings. He anointed Saul and David, the greatest king who ever existed in the kingdom of Israel. And I heard God say, "You aren't just a king, you're a kingmaker. Keep going, keep going." And where I want to make this connection is to like I want to add, and so the rest of the story is this: when I was running this race, I twisted my ankle really, really badly. And I remember thinking like all this training, it was about mile 4. It was very early. And I didn't hear God's voice, just so you know, I'm not going to overstate this, but I did hear, just keep going. Just keep going. Right. And sometimes that's all that discipline is keep going. Like sometimes you're 3 yards from the finish line and you stop, right? Because the enemy is attacking you. Yeah, it hurt. My ankle hurt really badly, and I could have stopped, but I kept going, and about a mile later it was that's all.
You know, I love that story, and you actually didn't share that with me about twisting your ankle during the race. So I mean,
Right.
that's I love stories like that, movies like that, moments like that where this is like the fork in the
Yeah.
road where I
Yeah.
can stop and quit right now, or you can, dig your heels in and press forward.
Yeah.
I think many men who come into situations like that where it's like I can quit or I can keep going, I would argue that 80% will choose to quit. 80% will choose to the easy way out because to explore that other 20%, that unknown, that dark of I finished this race, it would have been so much easier to twist your ankle and be like, hey, I tried it. I got to
Yeah, I
mile
tried it.
4 and
Yeah.
that's it.
That's
I played the game. But deep inside, you're going to know, like you set out all these months and made this promise to yourself to complete this race, yet you take the easy way out from an injury. And I actually think that's where a lot of men make the mistake early on. Actually, it's are you setting to your goal to finish and complete the race or just start? Right? Because there's two very different approaches. If you just want to start, you can sign up, pay the fee.
right.
You're in the race. You can say you did it. Right? You can do a mile. Technically, you did it. Or are you really going to finish? But most men do not do that. They can get things started, but they won't see it through the end. And it's a lack of discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you know, right? Like so discipline is long standing, right? So
Mm.
you have to put in the miles to be able to run a race like that. Just one more piece that I'd like to add about this is someone said to me like, "Oh, you probably would have kept going anyways." No, I mean there is a time to stop, and I remember saying like, "Okay, I'll run on this for a while." And see how it goes. If it gets better, I'll keep going. I mean, there are times to stop. You don't need to be an idiot, right? There are times when you look at the situation and you have to reevaluate and go, okay, I'm moving in a direction that is not working for me.
Mm.
But yes, 80% of people stop too soon. It's just as foolish to continue down a road that is not working if you're in severe pain, metaphorically or physically. And yeah, I would have stopped. I'm not at that place in my life. I'm nearly 50 where I have to finish at all costs.
Mm.
That's foolhardy, but most people stop too soon.
Yeah.
Evaluate.
It's a thing. Like if people played sports or anything growing up, I'm sure your coaches have said it to you. Are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
difference. Do you just sprain your ankle or do you straight break it? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference. And even so, I mean, like, I had this really heated debate with someone one time, and I'm like, if you can do one push up,
Yeah.
you can do 100. And they're like, no, well, what if your client is like severely
Yeah.
overweight, has this, has that, and this and that? I'm like, if you can do one, you can do 100. I never said do it in 30
Yeah, that's
minutes.
right. That's right.
I never said do it in an hour.
Yeah.
It might take you longer. It probably will take you longer, but
Yeah.
it
You
can
can
get
do
done.
100. Yeah.
You can be just, you got to be specific with it.
That's
Um,
correct. Yeah. So being clear about your goal, right? So I was clear in that, right? Like my goal was to finish. People kept asking, like, well, what is your plan? Like, well, my goal, like I wanted to finish because I hadn't run that before. Now I've done it now. Like my goal would be different. And
mhm.
I appreciate what you're saying there is like know your goal. Know your goal. Like if you're a beginner, maybe your goal is doing 100 push-ups. If you've done push-ups forever, maybe your goal is to do 100 push-ups in 30 minutes, or no, whatever, in 10 minutes. Know what you're capable of. And what I'm doing right now in terms of physical training, and if this fits, is also same thing. Like people don't lift heavy enough. If you want to grow, and this goes out for mental things, for emotional things, if you're going to grow, it's got to hurt.
Mm.
You've got to push yourself. And I'm one in the weight room. I don't like to push myself. I'm just being honest. And I've been doing it, and it sucks. Like it just sucks. But if you want to grow, you've got to push yourself. You've got to sweat. You've got to put the equity into it, and it has to hurt, or it's not going to grow.
Yeah. So I loved, my early entrepreneurial ventures was always around fitness. And I loved the strong correlations of fitness
Yeah,
and life. To build the muscle, you got to break it down
yeah,
so that you can build the new muscle, the bigger muscle, the stronger muscle into it. And I'm like, that's life.
yeah,
You got to break down in order to build back up. And you see it everywhere. You see it in nature. You see it in life. You see it in business. You see it in everything else. There's a build up
yeah.
process after a breakdown
That's right.
process. So I love how that coincides with what we're talking about in discipline. And I appreciate you sharing your story. I think that's going to be a big
Yeah.
takeaway, being specific with your goal. Go ahead. You got
So
the last word.
let me finish with this. So if you are feeling broken down, maybe that's where you're going to be built, right? So it
Mm.
doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're a failure. And I know someone listening needs to hear this right now. It means that you're being built. It means that God is challenging you and getting you ready for something powerful. Don't quit because self confidence is keeping the promises that you make to yourself.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you guys checking in. These are the shorter, right into it episodes, and I hope to keep that up. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks
All
for
right.
tuning in.
Thanks.